Hello. Today
Hi.
we are talking. Damn it!
Well, we almost made it.
I'm sorry.
Classic Castlevania versus Igarashi era Castlevania. Today on Press B to Cancel. Press B to cancel.
I thought Igarashi was involved in all of them.
No. All right. He's got to introduce us first.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Werewolf. Wait,
No, you're not.
okay.
Lion
Keep going.
sack.
Guilty.
But enough talk. Okay. Hello.
Haven't you?
Today. God damn it.
Because I only have 5 hours, okay?
So today we're talking about Castlevania, the old school platformer style, and then what most of us refer to as Metroidvania. And I am joined with Sick Jake,
Hey, great to be here.
Paulsh109,
Howdy.
and Guy Prime of the Retrotherapy.
Hi.
Oh. Perhaps
Well, it's
later.
gonna be one of those podcasts. Okay.
So, this is a topic that I've seen the debates get pretty heated. So, before things are over, I just want to say it's been a good run, guys. I'm sorry. I love y'all. Now, maybe
It
not
was
later.
really
We'll
cool
see.
getting to know you, yeah.
But there's a lot of people out there who firmly believe one is far superior to the other. And I want to sort of tackle that, but from a less objective standpoint. We're going to be a little more subjective about it, which, I mean, I think that's what this discussion almost always is anyway. But
Yes.
We're very science specific.
we're not picking the entire one side versus the entire other side. We're sort of picking favorites from either side and then weighing them against each other a bit. So, I guess I will start. My favorite classic Castlevania is Castlevania Bloodlines, and I only played that for the first time about a year ago. I'd been pretty familiar with a lot of the standard platformers, and for sake of clarification, we're not including the 3D entries, only 2D. We want to make this as even as possible here. But have you guys touched Bloodlines at all?
Oh yeah. I had the cart. That meant something on Genesis because I had like 3 or 4 Genesis games tops.
No, I have not. I've not touched Bloodlines.
What about you, Jake?
Yeah, absolutely. My first experience with it was on the Sega channel that we used to have as a kid for a little bit. And I actually also love this one. This is actually going to be my pick.
All right. Well, then that shortens that up a little bit.
4.5
This game,
hours.
to me, really looks better than any of the entries that came before it, including the Super Nintendo one. I don't know when Rondo of Blood came out. I don't know a whole lot about Rondo of Blood. I didn't play it until it was on PSP, so bear with us on that one. I'm not too familiar with that, but I played Dracula X on the SNES, and that game was not that good. So it beats out the other ones.
Well, okay, when you say graphics being the best, we got to dive a little bit into that one because I was actually talking earlier before the podcast about this. Some of the boss sprites are pretty bad. Like the Frankenstein,
yeah.
He's twice as tall, the character. He looks like so out of place, like a sprite rip was put into the game.
And don't forget the Clock Gears meets Vector Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clock Gears meets
Well,
Vector Man. But also, Frankenstein can be varying heights. You're taking parts from other people. Maybe they're NBA players. We don't know.
GP does make a valid
Devil's
point.
advocate.
Hey, we don't know. He could have been like just a bunch of dead Russian guys.
Whoa. Look, you said that. I didn't say that.
Like, can we get away from the stereotypes in the movie industry, please? Please.
Sure
No.
thing.
But how are we going to talk about Castlevania?
That's true. It is all one giant trope, yeah.
But I thought it looked a lot better, and I even thought a lot of the music was really good. The only thing I hated was the rest of the sound design. The music was good. Everything else about it was bad. But I think on the whole, this is probably my strongest entry in the classic platformer format.
Well, I got a question real quick about this one because I may have played it.
Okay.
Is this one that has like the descendants of the OG characters, like the guy who's from Texas?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
So,
yeah, I've played this one. This one's
you're not
okay.
a Belmont, you're John Morris. So they tried to tie it in with the Dracula novel. So that's
John Morris and was it Eric Lecard?
Yeah, that's the spear guy.
Okay.
Okay, so is this the one that has the character, like, create your own character? I'm kidding, obviously. No, I have played this one on the Genesis. I've got this multi-cart that has it. I do like this one. Not as much as the NES entries, but this one is good.
See, for this one, I respect what they did with some of the graphic tricks they tried to do. I mean, obviously, the Genesis has different hardware than the SNES, and they tried to do stuff you just can't do on Nintendo, right? There's one leaning tower level. You're jumping on these like platforms away from these gargoyles that are chasing after you, and the platform or the tower in the background kind of leans back and forth. It's pretty cool. There's some really neat reflection tricks they try to do in some of the levels, but then sometimes it's neat, but it's not really effective. There's one stage where the screen is torn in 3 sections, and as you walk through, it's like the screen tearing effect on the character.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
very weird. It's neat, but I don't know if it's good. So when it comes to graphics for me, I feel it's a mixed bag.
I think in that level, it was supposed to be, I think they called it like the Hall of Mirrors or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was supposed to be like...
You were supposed to have to monitor the platforms in varying degrees to make sure you were jumping where you were supposed to be.
Yeah.
It was making you work a little bit outside the face value platforming mechanics.
Like A for effort for sure. It's just a bit fell flat for me there. But I mean, overall though, the multiple characters, I love playing as Eric Lecard with the spear. I found his playthrough fantastic. The music is just absolutely killer. You have the classic tunes in there, but they have a lot of new stuff that's great. I found it pretty solid for a Castlevania game. There's a few things that are different. I still to this day don't understand why it's crystals that you pick up from candles instead of hearts. I don't understand why that's a thing. But I mean, overall,
Yeah, I don't get
fun.
the gems over hearts.
Yeah, solid pick.
There's also one of the earlier stages where the stage is constantly flooding and the water line is raising up and up and you're trying to move vertically. And it's a pretty tough stage for somebody like me, but I remember the first time I played that thinking, this would be a dope Sonic level. But legitimately, like that's where my mind was with that. And I enjoyed it enough once I got through it. It was one of those games where like playing through it was a bit of a chore, but you know, looking back retrospectively, it's pretty tight game, pretty solid. So yeah, I like it.
All right, so GP, let's move on to your pick.
Castlevania Bloodlines. No, I for me, honestly, of the OG Castlevanias, I love Simon's Quest. It's kind of controversial. I understand that. But really, that was the only Castlevania I had ever played up until about a year ago. I had seen some people play Castlevanias 1 and 3, and I was a little familiar with 4. So when I was doing my first playthroughs of them, I really, at that point, did not have enough vocabulary with the series to identify which one was 1 or 3. I just knew 2. So 2 for me has the nostalgia. I like the slightly more RPG-esque mechanics of it. And as much as I really do enjoy 3 and 1, 2 is just where it's at for me.
All right, now before we get any further, I do want to address something. GP said he's unfamiliar with the Igavania style Castlevanias. And I think it's funny that his classic pick is the one that's kind of right between the two formats.
Yeah, it's true.
No, that sounds like some shit I would do. But no, when you guys were like, hey, here's what the topic for the day is going to be, I had to ask a couple different times, like, okay, what does that word mean?
Yes.
I've heard Metroidvania 10,000 times, but I've never heard of Igavania.
Now, I do want to mention that apparently in an interview, everybody calls them Metroidvanias, In an interview, Koji Igarashi has outright stated that he was not inspired by Super Metroid or Metroid at all. He was actually inspired by Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, aside from being overhead instead of 2D side-on, they're basically the same gameplay loop. So it's not all that different, but it's just kind of an interesting note there. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about Castlevania 2?
No, I mean, I really just kind of going back to the RPG aspect of it. I like the find an item, take it back to this place. You know, hunting and gathering is the Castlevania for the day for me. Yeah,
that definitely drew me in as a kid too. That's one game I always was drawn to and just could never figure out since it had the poor translation.
Yeah, I will say this. K-Biz, you know, from the therapy channel,
the Face of Retro.
He donated, right, the Face of Retro. Happy birthday, Biz. He donated to the channel a cart of what they call the redacted version of Castlevania 2, which is an NES cart with a more accurate or at least a more understandable translation. And so if you have the means of getting your hands on that type of version of the game, I highly recommend it if it's your first playthrough.
Yeah, definitely don't go grab the original if you have the option for this, because you're going to be lost without a guide.
We touched on this too when we were talking about Castlevanias before, but the poor translation was also part of the idea behind the characters that you talk to. He was calling them deliberate liars. I'll never forget that now, because it's just like, oh, they're supposed to be talking cryptic, stupid, garbled crap. So it was intentional is the thing. Besides poor translation, it was actually, they weren't really helpful to begin with.
I don't know. To me, poor translation and misleading dialogue, just two things that should not go hand in hand to me.
That's fair.
Sorry, Jake, I stepped on you there, but
it's okay. I'm used to it.
Well, two kids, you should be.
What is loneliest number that there ever was?
All right,
Jake, we talked
Paul's,
about this.
What is your selection for the classic?
I used to be with GP pretty much for all the same reasons. Simon's Quest was just my favorite. It was one of the few games that I had. So on NES, so I was like, oh, okay, cool. I get to play this over and over and over again. But after I struggled my way through Castlevania 3, like about a year and a half ago, it's taken the place just for the pure conquest of beating it and doing it all as Trevor Belmont, because I just apparently wanted to make myself suffer even more. So, but anyways, yeah, it replaced it. The difficulties there, it's there's so much going for it. The music is amazing. It basically took the first one and ramped it up. I thought it felt super tight, as frustrating as it was. And after all the troubles playing through 2, which I really didn't mind as a kid, now I'm just like, I kind of like 3 more.
3 did have a lot of charm to it. Like you said, with the multiple characters, it definitely added a lot of depth to the game.
Yeah. And there's more, you have different routes you can take, sorry.
Even then, some of those decided by your party.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't get the same experience if you want to play it a different way, you get a different experience. And I think that was really ahead of its time.
It's very influential on other games of that genre, I think, for sure. It's definitely the most polished Castlevania, I think, for the classic games. I think it's a great one, too, as well. I love the multiple characters. I think that's such a game changer for the series.
I really enjoyed playing as Grant in that one.
I couldn't do it. I was terrible with him.
Just climbing on the walls and the ceiling. It was great.
Yeah, when you go from playing as a Belmont with Belmont mechanics to, being able to jump 3/4 of the screen and stick to walls and ceilings, it's a game changer.
Yeah, he's basically Spider Grant.
Yeah. I want to say, though, that it was very tough for me because I kind of think of the original 3 on Nintendo as the OGs, and then everything else after that is kind of this fork in the road where everything is different. And Super Castlevania 4 might be my first compared to 3. I'm not sure. If I had to play one, or if I had to play a single one, I should say, not one, it would probably be Super Castlevania, but the most satisfying win was definitely 3.
All right, and then we can move on to discussing our picks for the Igavania format. So, Paul, how about you start us off since you finished us off on that one?
Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I'm going with the originator.
Completely fair.
It's just good. The story, the fact that they changed it up so much. It starts off like a typical Castlevania. You have the 2D aesthetic. The sprites are really beautiful. They're really well animated. The music kicks in. I mean, you're rushing in and getting in through the gates of the castle right away and barely make it, and it just kind of gets you amped right away. And then it looks so familiar. The first section is basically the first level of Castlevania 1. So they have that nostalgia that just hits you right in the gut. And then they just, your OP is anything. And then next thing you know, you're basically a nobody and you have to start from the bottom again. And it's like, oh, cool. So now I got to work my way back up. So you get a taste of all the power, and then they take it from you. It's kind of like a Metroid game, or at least Metroid Prime, where you have all the goodies and then you lose it. Then you got to get yourself back, and then you come back even stronger.
Yeah, that's at least it used to be a pretty standard way of doing things with video games. I remember Lufia did it, just with different parties.
Right.
Yeah, Symphony of the Night is definitely a very, very good entry. It's not really been topped too well by subsequent Igavania style games. And then it has its fair share of issues, but I think overall it's still aged pretty well. Some of the acting though was super cheesy.
Oh yeah.
The voice actor for Alucard, he kind of nailed it because he wasn't that good. It really made Alucard kind of sound disinterested in everything, which would make sense for the most part. But I don't think it was on purpose. No offense to the guy. He had an amazing voice for it, but I don't think he was the sort of acting they were really looking for in the final form. It was just, it worked out.
Was that
But
quote he
a lot
does
of the
about
dialogue
men or
was
humanity?
cheesy.
What is man but something?
Nothing but
Oh no, that was
miserable
Dracula.
secrets.
That's Dracula.
Yeah, that's Richter and Dracula. What is a
But
man?
I mean, it's got such memeable quotes in the game and everything like that, but the writing was a little cheesy. The only thing I will give it is, like, at the end, what game has a final boss quoting the Bible at you after you kick his ass,
Yeah, that was a really nice touch.
I guess I will give my pick, which would actually be probably Aria of Sorrow. I feel like Aria of Sorrow did what Symphony of the Night did, but a little better. It didn't have the voice acting, but it also didn't have just the castle upside down again. It was a big map that didn't just rehash pieces of it.
So for people listening, which one was that? Was it on the DS or the GBA?
That was the GBA one.
That was the advance, yeah.
That was Soma Cruz.
Okay, yeah.
And in the year 2037, I believe it was?
The distant future, 2037.
Yeah.
2035.
Was it 2035?
Yeah.
Okay, then the DS one was 2037.
65 billion years in the future. Soma Cruz is here to take on Dracula and Riker.
I will say that the Sorrow games, Aria and Dawn of, they really made me want to see what they could do with the actual War of 1999 that's mentioned in those ones a lot, where Dracula's actually killed.
Right.
And then Konami just never delivered.
There's been a lot of
classic Konami.
Yeah, there's been a lot of things over the series of the games that the timeline has been like tainted and convoluted so many times that I think there's quite the long list.
I think they even allude to the War of 1999 in Curse of Darkness.
Really?
Yeah, there's the time traveler guy. Wears the top hat.
Oh, yes.
I think he mentions it. He alludes to it, rather. He doesn't outright mention it, but he says things that you can easily connect to that. And then that was it. That was the last we got of it.
I'm not familiar with this at all. What War of 1999?
Okay, so in Aria of Sorrow, there's a Belmont running around the castle trying to figure out why the castle's back. You know, he's the one who initially killed Dracula in 1999. There was actually a big war at Castlevania. There were armies, military armies, attacking the castle, and then armies of demons fighting back.
What?
And Julius Belmont got in there and sealed Dracula in an eclipse. That's how they killed him.
That's weird. It's interesting.
Yeah, because normally they just kill him, and every 100 years he comes back. So you have to fight him again.
Science is kind of funny that way.
I mean, you're not wrong. Or are
Right.
you?
But anyway, back with Aria of Sorrow, the soul collecting or spirit collecting, I think it was souls. It I feel like it added something to what Symphony of the Night was doing. And then they also gave you a bit more variety in weapon types, which was nice. So I feel like, personally, Aria of Sorrow expanded on the Symphony of the Night format and mostly improved upon it. Yeah, it sucks that it was on GBA, so the sound isn't quite as good because you have that stupid little GBA hiss constantly. But other than that, I think it was great. All right, Jake, how about your pick?
Okay, so for me, my pick is Symphony of the Night also. But before I get into that for a minute, I did want to touch base on the first GBA one. I believe it's Circle of the Moon.
Yeah.
Yes.
That wrong? So that one, I almost selected that one mostly because of the upgrade system. I found it very interesting how you collected these tarot cards and you combine the two together to get different effects in the whip. I found that just incredibly fun and very rewarding when you found one of the levels. So I almost picked that one.
I do feel like Circle of the Moon is underrated.
Yeah, and it's great. Like, I get the appeal of the later ones for sure, but Circle of the Moon, I think, is a tight game on its own, right? But that's not my favorite. My favorite is Symphony of the Night. To expand a bit on my pulse, the reason why I like it so much is because there's actually two characters in it, right? Like, there's a game that keeps on giving in terms of surprises, right? First off, you beat the game, or you think you do, and there's a whole second castle. That's mind-blowing to my head.
Spoilers!
But after spoilers, yeah, if I ruined a 30-year-old game, sorry.
Right?
But the inverted castle is incredibly awesome to play through. But then after, when you realize you can input Richter, I think there's a name you input in the save file, and you get to play the entire game as Richter. This is amazingly, drastically different gameplay when you're playing as Richter. There's no inventory, there's no items. It's literally all your abilities are unlocked at the beginning, from what I remember. Or you might get a few later on.
Yeah, I never even got far enough. It is tough.
Yes. So I remember doing it as a teenager. I beat it as Richter, but like, he takes incredible amounts of damage from the monsters, the bosses especially. But he's a lot more powerful. I think, Paul, you said it best before the podcast. You said he's a glass cannon, and that's absolutely
he's definitely
true.
a glass cannon. Except for, like, glass cannon makes me think Final Fantasy monk, and he does not get around like a monk does.
Well, but he has a lot more mobility though. Like, he has the backflips and slide attacks and like the dash moves, like, and they all do damage.
The
So they're all
Dragon
attacking.
Punch.
Yeah, he's incredibly fun to play. Like, he has a much wider variety of moves than I expected.
But it is definitely hard mode when you're playing as Richter. So
Yeah, absolutely different. But it's great to play as. And like, I guess the sprites are very similar to Rondo. I mean, that's a Konami trait with the series, right? They take sprites from one game and they reuse them constantly throughout the series. They've been criticized for that. But in this case, being able to play as a completely different character, I think is amazing. I've always wanted to play the Saturn version of Symphony of the Night because you can also play as Maria in that one. Even though that port
she
has bad.
is a badass in that game.
Oh, is she? Okay.
Yes.
Because like, I think she uses like summons animals and pigeons and stuff, I think.
right.
Yeah, she's got, I believe it was 3 different types of magic, and each of those comes with its different summons.
Yeah, so that sounds amazing to play through. So that's my goal, is to play the Saturn port of Symphony of the Night at some point this year. Even though I know it's great, there's some transparency issues and it's a little bit laggy in spots, but still, the fact that there'd be 3 characters in that game is amazing to me. And I also just like Alucard as well. I like what they did with the game in terms of the inputs to do special abilities, like the Street Fighter style. I love the inventory system. I love the variety in the weapons. I know people like to dump on me for liking Warframe, but the reason I like Warframe is much like Symphony of the Night is the weapons themselves can be very distinctly different, right? This is a game where if you equip the shield rod, its attacks change completely based on what shield you're carrying, right?
Yeah, and it becomes the strongest weapon in the game, so...
Yeah, and it's hilarious. There's another one, the Jewel Sword, which when you do it right can turn enemies into gems. There's the sword that summons undead army when you do the input for it. There's a lot of really cool weapons in the game and items that may not be the best throughout the playthrough, but it can be incredibly fun to play with. It just really rewards you to find those hidden items. And just when you start playing with them and experimenting with them, and you realize how unique they are from some other ones. There's a lot of similar daggers and stuff too, but I really love the inventory system in that game, and I don't think it was replicated as well in the other titles. To be fair, I never did play the DS ones, so I don't know how those ones play. I've only played Symphony of the Night and the GBA ones.
The DS games were only edged out by Aria of Sorrow for me. Otherwise, I probably would have gone with Portrait of Ruin because of the touchscreen requirements. Had they not implemented the touchscreen for gameplay mechanics, I would have been with I would have been with probably Portrait of Ruin.
So how'd they force the touch controls? What were they doing with it?
I don't remember exactly how it worked in Portrait of Ruin, and it's been so long since I played it. Maybe Portrait of Ruin didn't rely on it, but I know in in Dawn of Sorrow, after you beat a boss, you had to seal the boss by drawing on the screen.
Oh, okay.
And if you didn't do it in the time frame or you didn't do it right, I think you had to go back and fight it with a little bit more health.
Oh, that would be really bad.
Get another chance to do it. Yeah, it was very frustrating.
Yeah, I'm always hit or miss when it comes to touch controls, but that sounds like a bad implementation for it.
Yeah, especially a game like that where it's very frantic and you're running around, and then you gotta your finger was pretty inaccurate at trying to draw these little lines that it put on the screen. So you really had to grab for the stylus and draw on the screen in the allotted time and hope you did it right.
Oh, I remember that.
It was a bad implementation for sure.
I really remember that now. Yeah, I was playing the game with the stylus in my mouth all the time.
Yeah, I think I did that too after a while. Actually, pretty sure the end of my stylus on my my DS
all chewed
was
apart.
all chewed up.
Yeah.
Before we get too far from talking about Symphony of the Night, though, I do want to mention that in the PSP version, you also could play as Maria. However, her movesets were changed.
Is it the same sprites and everything, or different?
I think she was the same sprite, but her overall, all her spells and everything were completely changed. She does not play the same as she did on the Saturn.
I'll have to look that one up and see which one is better to play.
She was actually, in my opinion, she got nerfed. Because she was pretty overpowered in the Saturn version. But that's what made it fun. You just summon a big-ass dragon that would wipe out everything on screen.
I'm cool with that.
She dropped quick if you got hit. So
yes. And then I'd also like to remind you of being able to play as an axe armor.
Yeah, so I did that as well, and it's neat, but I never did I never really got far with it. Because you move, the axe armor is really clunky, right?
Mm-hmm. So in the US, the original release, or in the Western release initially, you technically had 3 ways you could play the game. And then in the Saturn re-release, you had 4. So it did have a lot for it.
Did it change the endings at all, or is it the same ending, regardless of what you look like?
No, I think there were only endings based on progress.
I'm just looking at speedrun.com, and they have categories for Alucard, Richter, and Maria, but no axe armor. I was just curious if somebody crazy enough to actually go through the game as axe armor.
Well, I don't think axe armor was exactly axe armor. I think you'd put on a piece of armor and it would transform Alucard.
Oh, okay. It's been so long.
I think that's how it worked. So that's why it still had the stat screen and all that, and he technically got stat ups, but it sucked.
as a fun joke, you want to take a guess what the speedrun record is for Symphony of the Night?
28 minutes?
That's pretty close. It's actually 16 for Alucard.
Oh.
And it's
Wow.
mind-blowing. It's 5 for Richter. That's
Jeez.
crazy. 7 as Maria. That's wild.
Well, yeah, but as Richter, you basically just run to Dracula and fight him, so.
Yeah, I guess you don't need to find the items and stuff. But I have to watch that after, because I'm curious now what items they are required to pick up to make progress. That seems
I knew it
wild
was low because I'm pretty sure I heard of a guy doing it in under 40 minutes blindfolded. Which is just mind-blowing to know that big of a game that well. That's ridiculous.
That sounds like a date night to me. But yeah, no, that's...
You mean 5 minutes?
Harsh, but not wrong. Not wrong. Yeah. I just love Symphony. Symphony Night is so good. I just love everything about it. Like, a lot of the ways, I'll say the music and the classic ones are better, but the gameplay-wise, I just love Symphony of the Night.
I mean, the music in Symphony of the Night is still amazing, too.
Symphony of the Night had some amazing music, but the Upside Down Castle had like 3 songs.
Yeah, this is true.
That was my issue with the Upside Down Castle, is it did not have enough music.
It's okay, it's still my favorite.
So I think all my issues with Symphony of the Night stem from the Inverted Castle.
Right, but without it, it's half a game, right?
Like, it was a cheesy way of filling out the game, it felt like. But the way they did it felt like they weren't... They worked around it somehow. And, it was a cheesy idea, but executed really well.
Yeah, that's fair. All right.
I'm just fanboying, so don't worry about me.
Jake, your pick between the two. Would you side with Bloodlines or would you side with Symphony?
Oh, no, it's got to be Symphony of the Night. In terms of just the sheer amount of gameplay and value from Symphony of the Night, it trumps everything that Bloodlines is. And Bloodlines is a good example of the classic ones for replay, because you do have the 2 characters, but Symphony of the Night, just the Richter, the Alucard, the Inverted Castle, I spent dozens of hours with that game versus, a couple hours of Bloodlines? It's no contest for me. And, like, the sound design in Symphony of the Night is way better. The music, I probably like Bloodlines better. Because I find the Classicvania songs are far more memorable than Symphony of the Night. Like, I can't name a single Symphony of the Night tune if I heard it. It just sounds a little too generic to me, but I know that I'm in the minority for that one. But gameplay, hands down, Symphony of the Night.
All right, how about you, Pulse?
Oh man, I was preparing myself for that this whole time, and now I don't know what to say. I love me some Igavanias. I love them. They're just satisfying, but they're a completely different beast than the old Castlevanias, than the classics. I think Super Castlevania 4 may beat out the rest of them slightly, but I don't want to give up one for the other. If you had to make me give up one for the other, I'm going to go with the classics just for that. But that's only because without the classics, you wouldn't have Symphony of the Night. So, I mean, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. So, I'm going to go with the OG ones. It hurts. I feel like I'm cheating on a lover.
Since GP's pick was technically straddling the line, and he's not really too familiar with the Igavania games in general,
I think I have to go with Order of Ecclesia.
Attaboy.
Go on. Give me your 15 reasons why it's better.
yeah, let's hear him. Let's hear it.
Jake. Well, I'll say this, though. If anybody ever, to me, the definition of Igavania is, I've always called it the blank of blank series. Because literally, Aria of Sorrow, Order of Ecclesia, Dawn of Sorrow, Portrait of Ruin, Harmony of Dissonance, they're all blank of blank titles.
All music terms, generally,
So I think that's...
Usually, except for, Circle of the Moon.
Yeah, that's... but no, yeah, clearly I'm going with Castlevania 2. I've watched a lot of Symphony of the Night, and I enjoyed that one. I know Aria has kind of that indie movie feel to it where it's critically very well received, but it's not a huge seller. At least back in Japan it wasn't. So I respect it for that. But yeah, make mine Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest.
Alrighty. And then for me, I do have to go with the Igavanias over the classics. I do love the classic games. I grew up on them. They're the reason I love Castlevania. But after that, I kept falling in love with the Symphony of the Night, Nocturne in the Moonlight, and then subsequent releases after that. I just kept wanting one on a home console, and they kept not giving it to me. That's the only thing that frustrated me about that. But I got to go with the Igavanias on this one. There's just so much more gameplay in every entry. And yeah, not all of them are good. Like, what's the one with Juiced Belmont? Is that Harmony of Dissonance?
That's Dissonance, yeah.
Yeah.
That game was
name.
so awful. And I don't understand why. That one was... I remember trying it, and I was like, gosh, this game is ugly, and gosh, this music is terrible. And then I read an interview, and they were like, oh yeah, we gave up the... I don't remember which side it was on, but they sacrificed one of the aspects for the other.
Right.
I don't remember if it was they sacrificed the graphics for the sound or the sound for the graphics. But either way, they were both awful.
Yeah, they were both
So I don't
bad,
understand where the sacrifice came in.
I was into it. It was one of the Game Boy Advance games I actually had, but it was more me being like, oh, I will take anything that has Castlevania written on it at this point. So, but looking back, especially looking at the screenshots, I'm just like, that was terrible. And you always had this weird glow, like you had this blue aura around your character,
Mm-hmm.
and I never understood why.
They made a lot of weird choices with that game. They made both the main characters look like Michael Jackson in different years.
Thank you. Oh my God, thank you.
So would you say these games
So they
don't...
sacrifice graphics for sounds.
Yeah.
What's that? I didn't hear anything.
Oh God, I'm sorry. Yeah, I talked over Jake. Jake, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you mean these games don't do the Castlevania series justice?
Ah,
I'm done now. Sorry, GP,
I
go
see
ahead.
what you did there.
Well, no, I was just saying you couldn't remember if they were sacrificing visuals for sound or the opposite. But if the character just looks like Michael Jackson from different eras, my guess is they sacrifice graphics for sound. And I mean, no disrespect, I really love Michael, but yeah, the music is better. I have to look that one up. I don't know anything about that, but I'll be honest, you had me at Blue Aura. I have to look into it now.
It looks like you have, like in Final Fantasy VI, you know, when you have slow or anything on you and you have that colored aura, basically, instead of having the black outline.
Oh, yeah, it
It's
was like that because you had a...
Right.
Do that with a blue one instead of pink or white.
It would fade in and out, right? It wasn't constant blue. It would fade black to blue to black to blue or something like that, or white to blue. I don't remember.
Today, it probably looks hard. It doesn't look that great, and it looks kind of cheesy. But when you're playing a handheld, I think it would probably improve things.
No, it didn't.
I'm wrong.
That's when I played it. It was bad. I have it on the GBA. It's
Okay, because I played
bad.
Circle of the Moon on GBA, and there's some sequences that were kind of hard to pick out with the character in the background because everything was so dark, right?
Circle of the Moon still looks a lot better especially in comparison.
Circle of the Moon for the platform looked great. And then there was Aria of Sorrow for the platform, looked great. And then there was Harmony of Dissonance. And Dissonance, indeed, it was so far behind the other two.
Yeah, it lived up to its
title. It was unbelievable. Not even that. Like, I actually gave the game a really good fair shake a while back. It was just, there were hallways that were repeats of other hallways in the game. There were segments of gameplay where they just copy-pasted hallways to make the game feel bigger than it was. And it was just more backtracking than needed to be. It was not interesting. So that's my one, the one I hate in the Igavanias. But overall, besides that one, I think they were all great. It's kind of hard to decide which one won from this, but I don't think that was the point. I think it was just more to dig in and really see how we remember these, where we stand on them. And honestly, it's all about the good times we have with these games anyway, right?
No, I want to be better than you at everything.
Oh, well, I guess the podcast is over then.
No, I didn't mean it. God.
Well, would you say there's any of these, both classic and Igavania ones that are just not worth your time today? I know Dissonance, you shot on that one quite a bit, but like,
Yeah,
what are the other ones?
Don't Harmony of Dissonance, and then, oh gosh,
Generally, the rule is don't 3D when you Castlevania.
Yeah, see, I played the N64 one a little bit, and I just couldn't get into it. I know people like it, I just couldn't get into it.
I actually beat that one. I don't remember with which character, but I did beat it.
I couldn't beat it, and then they had like about a year later, not even a year later, I think it was. They had Legacy of Darkness where you play as a werewolf. I beat that one, but I never beat Castlevania 64.
Did Igarashi have a say in the 3D ones, or he was just strictly the 2D ones post Classic?
I'm not sure.
Not sure.
Because he didn't. The first one he worked on for Konami was Symphony of Night, right?
I think that was the first one he directed. But see, holding the N64 games against the PS2 games is kind of unfair. Sure, Lament of Innocence was not the best Castlevania by any means, but it also wasn't bad.
No.
And then Curse of Darkness actually did a pretty darn good job of bringing the Igavania format to 3D.
So for his works, he special thanks apparently in Rondo of Blood, but he wasn't a director until Symphony of the Night. He was at Konami in '92, where he worked on Twin Bee and Gradius too. But yeah, he didn't touch Castlevania really until Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And he was only promotional credit on Circle of the Moon. That's interesting. And then Harmony of Dissonance, he was director, a producer, and scenario writer. That's kind of interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to take this outside of the Castlevania realm for the most part as what he's been part of, because I know he just released Bloodstained, not even a year ago.
Yeah.
But I've not had the chance to play that, and I still want to.
Yeah, me too.
But it's also not officially Castlevania, even though a lot of people are like, well, it may as well be Castlevania.
It's like the clearest spiritual successor you could ever ask for.
Like the DMake, whatchamacallit, Curse of the Moon, and then the new one, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Yeah, they are clear callbacks to Castlevania 3 and Symphony of the Night. I look forward to you guys playing it. We should do an episode after to talk about it, because I do like both of them. But they're not Castlevania.
I'm down for that.
Alrighty, well then I think we have our discussion all wrapped up here. Is there anything else you guys would like to add to this?
I really like his hat. What's the deal? He's always wearing a hat. So Igarashi is always wearing the cowboy hat in promotional pictures. I don't get it. It looks good on him, but it's just bizarre.
It works for him.
Yeah.
It looks like the drummer in my old band, but with a cowboy hat.
Alrighty then. I think that's a wrap. So, once again, thank you. This has been Press B to Cancel. I was your host, Werewolf. WAREWULFF. I can be found here, Twitter, and Twitch. How about yourself, Jake?
I'm Sick Jake. I'm on Twitch and Twitter. I stream at least once every 6 months, and I'm looking at improving that goal in 2020.
You're doing quarterly at this point. I'm proud of you.
Well, I'm working hard, man.
Yeah, up that average, man.
Yeah, baby.
I'm going to apply for partner with Twitch. You think they'll take me?
It never hurts to try.
All right, GP.
Yeah, this is Guy Prime from the Retro Therapy. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram, or here at Press B to Cancel.
Just follow the face of Retro. He'll lead you there.
If not, just look for
and
A-Face.
Pulse.
Yeah, look for A-Face.
I'm Pulse109, PALSH109. You can find me here and at twitch.tv/Pulse109.
Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Special thanks for music go to Arthur the Ancient, found on SoundCloud, or The Last Ancient on YouTube. For more episodes, please visit our website, pressbtocancel.com. As well, feel free to like or subscribe at Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else you like to listen to your favorite shows. As always, thank you. This has been
Press B to Cancel.
Press B to